Many people carry a paralyzing burden of guilt for past sins. What's worse, they see no way out of their predicaments. These people don't run in the race of life, they plod at best. Beset by the crushing load of self-blame, they face each new day with yesterday's emotional baggage. Today, you'll hear God's way out of bearing guilt for the rest of your life. Stay with us. From Chicago's Moody Church, this is Running to Win with Dr. Erwin Lutzer, whose clear teaching helps us make it across the finish line. Today, Erwin Lutzer is continuing his series on After You've Blown It, Reconnecting with God and Others. He comes now to tell us about the guilt you can't wish away.
Well, tell me, man to man, is there a way out or isn't there? If there is, I want to know about it. If not, I'm going to blow my brains out. Those are the words of a man, a bisexual, who had just given his wife AIDS. She wasn't about to forgive him because of his lies and his deceptions and his dishonesty. And now he wondered what the future held. Is there a way out, or is there not? As you know, this is a series of messages titled, After You've Blown It, Reconnecting with God and Others. Today we're speaking about reconnecting with God, and we will do that for a few more messages in this series, and then we'll talk about the reconnection with other people. How do you live when others might not forgive you? How do you untangle messes for which you are responsible? But today we speak about the topic of guilt and our relationship with God. Because guilt is the most universal of all human emotions, feelings, and experiences. Guilt tells me that I have done something wrong. There is an ought to which I have not responded, and I've not lived up to the ought that I know I really should do. There is such a thing as false guilt. Sometimes children who are abused feel guilty simply because they were born. They feel guilty because their parents heap guilt upon them. But there is also something that we can call real guilt. It is objective guilt. It is us in the presence of God, the consciousness that we are out of sorts with the Almighty. And within our consciences, there is something within us that tells us we must pay. Pay up, our conscience tells us. Now, society has no answer to the problem of guilt, none whatever. Society basically says that if we lower the standards and simply say that everyone does it, why then indeed we'll be able to alleviate people of guilt. Maybe they can unlearn the feeling. But still, even after all of that, there's something within us that says you still owe, you must pay more. Or society tells us that if we blame other people, it's society's fault. It's the society that created an atmosphere in which I have to lie, I have to cheat, I have to steal, and I'm immoral because this is what society dictates. And yet at the end of the day, all of us know that despite all those rationalizations, there's still that voice within us that says, you've still not paid enough. Pay more. And so what do? We try to rationalize the voice away. We say to ourselves, if I can find somebody who is worse than I am, and generally that's not too difficult to do, someone who's a greater sinner, why then indeed I will feel better because I'm not so bad after all. But it does not silence the voice. And then there are those who think that they can even the score by being good. I have a friend who said that when he came home from school and mowed the lawn without being told, his mother used to say, well, what have you been up to now? She simply assumed that the boy was trying to cover for something. There are young people who've gone into drugs and immorality, and then They've gone into social work and they have said, look, I'm devoting my life to the poor. I'm working in social work. And what they don't realize is they're trying to even the score. They're trying to say, okay, I've done this over here, but here's something I can do to prove I'm really not all that bad, am I? But down deep inside, the voice still says, pay more, pay more. And so what happens in today's world especially is people choose a method of payment that only increases the intensity of the voice. They go into drugs and alcohol. A chaplain said to a young man in a hospital, a brilliant young man, why are you killing yourself with heroin? And he said, chaplain, you ought to know the answer to that question. I should not have to tell you why. He said, I feel so badly about things that I've done, and I don't have enough guts to blow my brains out, so I am dying slowly by using heroin. I'm dying on the installment plan. So people choose a way to silence the voice, to make the payment that only increases the intensity of the voice and increases the intensity and the need for a payment. And so people pay up, but they pay with their lives and their hearts. In a book on guilt, William Justice wrote, for every failure to live up to some ought, there is the tendency to punish oneself in such a manner so as to produce another failure. And every failure produces the response, I ought not to have failed. Having failed, I punish myself in such a manner as to produce a further sense of failure. My cycle is complete only to begin again. I have failed to live up to some ought for which I feel guilty. Convicted of guilt, I feel the need to pay. To pay, I choose a method that will leave me with a sense of having failed. On and on the cycle rolls downward. It may be compared to a snowball rolling down a hill, adding to its momentum with each revolution. He calls it the cycle of the damned. What else is hell but an awakened conscience with no ability to pay forever? I've known people who have married badly, married unwisely, married against all reason, and have not taken into account admonitions. And they have married that way because there was something within them that says,